Welcome. I'm Jerry Agar in for Ezra Levant. President of the Ontario Federation of Labour, Sid Ryan, is calling for free tuition for Canadian university students. Sounds delusional to me. Joining me now to talk about this is high school teacher and author of What's Wrong with Our Schools and How Can We Fix Them, Michael Zwaagstra. Michael, thanks for joining us.
Well, thank you for having me.
Good to have you along. So Sid Ryan evokes here his homeland of Ireland and says he finds it, as he thinks anyone Irish would, just amazing that we don't not only give free tuition all the way through grade 12, but in fact all the way through university as well. How do you react?
Well, there's a number of problems with his argument. One of those is that he says that it's a benefit to society for more people to get a university education, and that is true, and that's why in virtually every province the government covers about 80% of the actual cost of university. Tuition only represents about a fifth in most cases of what the education actually costs, and so most of the cost is already covered by the general public. But there is a specific benefit that the students who take the university education get for themselves. And it's appropriate to expect a university student to contribute something toward his or her education.
A friend of mine has a saying, what you get for nothing is good for nothing. And so what we're talking about, in a sense, with paying the tuition levels that Canadians do pay, which, as you point out, is not high, and other countries it can be much higher. Sid Ryan didn't talk about those countries. It's sort of like a down payment on a car or a house. We want to see the recipient have some skin in the game as well.
Well, that makes sense. There's a lot of things in life that work that way, where the person who receives the benefit is expected to contribute something towards it. And a university education, it's good for society, for lots of people to be well educated, but it's very good for the individual as well. Something that should be noted as well that Sid Ryan does not address at all is that when you look across the country and compare tuition rates, there's of course some substantial variations. And Statistics Canada data shows that you do not have a higher rate of university participation in the provinces with lower tuition rates. Actually, the provinces of Quebec and Newfoundland, which have the lowest tuition, also have the lowest percentage of students attending university. And conversely, you have Ontario and Nova Scotia with the highest tuition rates actually have the highest percentage of students attending university. So even on the practical level, in terms of the desire to get more students to attend university, the argument simply doesn't hold weight.
Well, Sid Ryan is also stumping in this column that we're referencing here for forcing companies to supply in-house training and various educational opportunities. But it seems to me that where that makes sense for corporations, they do it anyway.
Absolutely. Corporations do train their own employees frequently because it's in their best interest to have well-trained employees. But the moment you start having government getting involved and regulating the type of training that companies are supposed to provide and saying that they have to do it at this university, that's just simply absurd. Companies know for themselves what type of training their employees need, and they will make sure their employees are trained appropriate to their jobs because it's in their best interest to make sure that happens.
Well, very often people, when they make these claims, we should have free this or free that, are very weak on how to finance it. I'll give Sid Ryan credit. He at least comes up with an option. He essentially, if I'm understanding him correctly, wants to get rid of the military, stop funding things like the military. And he talked about a casino that is planned in Ontario, which he forgets to mention is not going to be built by the taxpayers. It's going to be built by the casino people. So this seems like the typical leftist union screed without any real actual benefit to Canada.
Well, it's fairly typical, and frankly, for the number of proposals that unions and people like Sid Ryan have made, I think they've already spent the money that they allegedly saved from scrapping the military a long time ago, because it seems like every spending proposal always involves saying we won't spend anything on the military, that's how we'll pay for it. So on a practical level, the ideas just simply don't make sense.
Well, you have addressed the issue of how to make education better in Canada. You clearly don't agree with Sid Ryan that the way to do it is to hand out free tuition. What do we need to do?
Well, I think that certainly when you look at the K-12 level of education, we need to make sure that we're actually preparing students for university. What often happens is that a student can receive a grade 12 diploma and yet not have the necessary reading and writing and mathematics skills to succeed at university. And so university can be very intimidating for someone who doesn't have the necessary skills and knowledge in place. So let's focus our efforts at some of the earlier levels, specifically at high school and even below, making sure our students are well educated there and actually learn the basics, and then they're actually actually prepared to go on to post-secondary education. I think that type of a thing would be far more beneficial than some absurd policy of just scrapping all tuition rates.
I can see a way to allow free tuition to university, and that would be to spend the same amount of money but have then fewer placements. And the way that the student would get in would not necessarily be just, I showed up, I want the tuition, I get in, or to pay tuition. It would be to earn their way in through scholastics. So we'd have fewer but maybe more highly qualified young people going to university. Would you have a problem with that?
Well, it's certainly an innovative approach, and much better than the one that Sid Ryan has proposed. Ultimately, we're talking about reprioritizing who goes to university and perhaps having a smaller number of people there. I don't know whether I'd want to completely go that route. I think it's that some of the students who are, let's say, average should still be able to go to university if they work hard, and because in many cases, if you don't do well in high school, there are cases where you can pull up your socks and do better in university. But certainly, if we're going to talk about improving access, I definitely agree with the idea of let's increase the amount of money that goes towards scholarships and reward students who do work hard, so that way it's easier for them to attend university. That would be a far more effective approach than just having free tuition for everyone.
Well, and we only have a few seconds left here, but let's also be on the record that you can, in fact, do well in life without a university education. There are other directions that you can take once you come out of high school.
There are many options for when you're done high school. We need many more people to take an education in the trades, vocational education and such. And frankly, that in some cases there are students who go to university that really shouldn't, that they should be pursuing other options. And so a university education is a good thing to get, but it's not something that everyone needs. It's something that is beneficial for some people, but there's many options in terms of careers when you're done high school.
Absolutely. I mean, those people who want to put down the idea of the trade school, you could go to university, get a fine education, and not be able to afford the plumber. Trade school is a good thing.
What happens often is you finish university and your degree isn't necessarily useful for anything, so you go to trade school after. I mean, we see that happening a lot too.
Thanks a lot.
You're welcome.